I stopped telling my mother my secrets, but it was already too late. The most important one, the one that could shatter my life, was already out. And true to form, she broadcast it to the world. Now, because of her, I was jobless and heartbroken, my life a smoldering ruin. It's funny how the person you trust the most can become the architect of your destruction. It started in high school. A stupid physics exam. I'd pulled a question that made my mind go blank, a jumble of formulas and forgotten principles. My teacher, Mrs. Albright, a woman with kind eyes and a soft spot for kids who tried, saw the panic on my face. She didn't want to ruin my GPA, so she nudged me toward the right answer, her whispers a lifeline in a sea of anxiety. I passed. It wasn't entirely honest, but I'd studied for weeks and it felt like a small kindness, a bit of grace in the cutthroat world of high school academics. Of course, I told my mom. Who else would I tell? She was my confidant, my best friend. I never imagined she'd tell anyone, but the story spread like wildfire. It went from her best friend to a neighbor to a parent on the PTA and finally back to the school. Mrs. Albright was reprimanded, her reputation tarnished. I had to retake the exam, and even though I aced it, they gave me a B out of principle. The injustice of it stung on. The injustice of it stung on. The injustice of it stung on. Holding. To Insolva stung. She was the most outraged of all, her voice dripping with indignation, conveniently forgetting she was the source of the whole nightmare. I wrote it off as a mistake, a lapse in judgment. I forgave her. I kept trusting her. There were other incidents, of course, a cascade of minor betrayals that, at the time, felt more like annoyances than warnings. Everyone in our small town knew which boy I had a crush on. When I'd asked my mom about the awkward mechanics of sex, where I'd been accepted to college, and the embarrassing details of my struggles with IBS. Each time, my mom would feign innocence, her eyes wide and guileless. I only told your grandmother, she'd say, or she'd say, or. I only told your grandmother, she'd say, or she'd say, or. I only told grandmother, she'd say, or. But the circle of her closest friends seemed to be ever expanding, a network of gossips who thrived on the intimate details of my life. I should have learned. I should have built a wall around my heart, a fortress to protect my secrets. But I wanted to believe in her. I wanted to believe that the woman who had raised me, the one who was supposed to be my staunchest ally, wouldn't knowingly hurt me. It was a foolish, childish hope, and it would cost me everything. 6 months ago, I landed the job of my dreams, a marketing position at a boutique firm in downtown Chicago. The pay was incredible for someone my age. The work was challenging, and the office culture was refreshingly sane. It was the kind of job people fought for, a place where you could build a real career. My friend Chloe, who was heading out on maternity leave, had gotten me in. It felt like my life was finally starting. The culmination kind of suffered. Then he walked in. Michael, our new department head. He was everything I'd ever found attractive in a man. Tall, with a quiet confidence that was magnetic, and eyes that seemed to see right through you. I fell for him instantly, a dizzying, all-consuming crush that left me breathless. He was married, of course. I knew that. I wasn't a homewrecker. I had no intention of acting on my feelings. I was content to admire him from afar, to let the sweet, secret ache of my crush be a private little joy in my otherwise professional life. But my work started to suffer. I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept drifting to his office, to the sound of his voice on the phone, to the way he'd smile when he passed my desk. I became distracted, my performance slipping from stellar to mediocre. The change was palpable, and my mom, with whom I still lived, noticed. She was like a heat-seeking missile for emotional distress, and she zeroed in on me with unnerving precision. One evening, after a particularly brutal day at work, she cornered me. Her questions were relentless, her concern a suffocating blanket, and in a moment of weakness, I broke. I told her everything. The crush, the distraction, the fear that I was going to screw up the best thing that had ever happened to me. I made her swear to keep it a secret, my voice trembling with the weight of my confession. She feigned indignation, her hand on her, hand on her, her hand on her, her hand on her. Of course, I'll be silent as the grave, she promised. And for a while, I think she was. But a secret from my mother is like a pressure cooker. It has to be released. And when it was a mangled, twisted version of the truth. The story, passed from one person to the next, had morphed into a sordid tale of a workplace affair. I was no longer the girl with a harmless crush. I was the other woman, the homewrecker actively trying to steal her boss away from his wife. I found out when Michael called me into his office, his face a mask of cold fury. He demanded an explanation. I was in shock, my words a tangled mess of denials and stammered explanations. I tried to tell him the truth, but it was useless. The damage was done. He didn't believe me. He told me to write my resignation, that someone with such a vivid imagination should find another outlet for their talents. They paid me out that day, my termination swift and brutal. I walked out of that office in a daze, the box with my personal belongings a heavy weight in my arms. I was crushed by the weight of it all, the humiliation of being fired, the pain of my mother's betrayal, and the sting of the anger in my mother's betrayal, and the sting of the anger in their mother's betrayal, and the sting of the anger in first. It's strange how these dark family secrets connect us. If this story is getting under your skin, subscribe for more real family exposés. I moved out the next day. I found a small, soulless apartment on the other side of the city, a place where the walls were thin and the silence was deafening. I didn't talk to my mother. I didn't answer her calls or respond to her text. I couldn't. The betrayal was a raw, open wound, and every time my phone buzzed with her name, it was like salt being poured into it. I blamed myself, of course. I was the one who had handed her the amnesia. It was the one who had handed her the amnesia. The amnesia, it was our sit-in, poetshidden, and his force. I was the one who had handed her the amnesia. Weeks turned into a month. I was a ghost, haunting the sterile rooms of my new apartment, the city lights outside my window a mocking reminder of the life I had lost. I replayed the scene in Michael's office over and over in my head, his words a relentless echo, a vivid imagination. The phrase was a brand, a permanent mark of my humiliation. I started to believe it myself. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. The stolen glances, the brief smiles, the easy camaraderie we'd shared before the rumors started. It was a dark, spiraling thought, and it was starting to consume me. Then a letter arrived. It was from Chloe, my friend who had gotten me the job. Her handwriting, usually a cheerful, loopy scrawl, was tight and anxious. She'd heard what had happened, and she was horrified. "I know you, Emily," she wrote. "I know you wouldn't do that. Something isn't right." She told me that Michael's wife, Sophia, was a notoriously jealous woman. She had a history of making his life hell over imagined infidelities. It was a small thing, a tiny crack in the wall of my self-doubt, but it was enough. A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe I wasn't crazy after all. I decided to do some digging. It was a long shot, but I had nothing to lose. I started with social media, the modern-day Pandora's box. I found Sophia's profile, a carefully curated collection of happy couple photos and gushing captions about her amazing husband. It was the perfect life, or at least a perfect performance of one. But as I scrolled deeper, I found a comment on an old photo, a seemingly innocuous remark from from a voting a seemingly innocuous remark from a seemingly innocuous remark from a Broadwell. A seemingly innocuous. You two are so perfect together, she'd written. I'm so glad you were able to work things out. Work things out? The phrase snagged in my mind. I clicked on Jessica's profile. It was public. And there, amidst the photos of her kids and her dog, was a picture of her and Sophia, their arms around each other, a caption that read, "So proud of my amazing sister for fighting for her marriage." Sister. My heart started to pound. I scrolled through Jessica's friends list, my fingers trembling. And then I saw it. A name that made my blood run cold. And made my blood run cold. They were friends. My mother and Michael's wife's sister. The realization hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't a random chain of gossip. It was a direct line. My mother hadn't just told a few friends, she told the one person who could do the most damage. The betrayal was deeper, more calculated than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just a loose tongue, it was a targeted strike. This moment shattered everything I knew. If you're feeling this shock too, it helps uncover more hidden family truths. I stared at the screen, the glowing pixels mocking me with their revelation. My mother, friends with Jessica, Sophia's sister. It wasn't just gossip, it was a weaponized whisper campaign, a targeted missile launched directly at my life. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening thud, each connection a fresh stab of betrayal. My mother hadn't just carelessly spread my secret, she had delivered it directly to the enemy, knowing full well the Volden. Ye valber the flexion. Knowing full well the was Sufger. Sufgothokwoden subpental. She had delivered it directly to the enemy. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface, a low, constant burn, now erupted into a volcanic rage. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, calculated act of sabotage, a twisted form of control disguised as maternal concern. The realization left me breathless, a bitter taste in my mouth. I called Chloe, my voice trembling with a mixture of fury and disbelief. She listened patiently, her calm demeanor a stark farce. Emily, this is intense, she said, her voice soft yet firm. But it makes a terrifying kind of sense. Sophia's family, particularly her sister Jessica, is notorious for being overprotective, almost possessive of their own. And Michael, he's a good guy, truly, but he's terrified of his wife. He's been through this before, you know. Been through what? I demanded, my grip tightening on the phone until my knuckles ached. More false souls made. More false souls until my knuckles ached. More false souls snaked. More false souls snaked. More innocent people getting caught in her crosshairs? Chloe hesitated, a sigh escaping her lips. Not exactly false, more exaggerated. A few years ago, before I started working at the firm, there was another woman in the office. Her name was Sarah. Nothing happened, absolutely nothing. But Sophia found out Michael had been having lunch with her to discuss a project. Jessica, I suspect, was the one who blew it out of proportion. She sucked. It was the one who blew it out of proportion. The woman, Sarah, ended up leaving the company, her career unjustly tarnished. It was a mess, Emily. A complete and utter mess. The revelation was a new twist, a bitter pill to swallow. Michael wasn't just a victim of my mother's gossip. He was a recurring victim of his wife's pathological paranoia, and I, unknowingly, had been caught in the crossfire of their toxic dynamic. The thought made my stomach churn. But it also sparked a flicker of an idea, a tiny ember of hope in the ashes of my despair. If Sophia had a history of this, if Jessica was the orchestrator, then there had to be a pattern. There had to be other victims, other people who knew the truth. And if I could find them, if I could gather enough evidence, I could clear my name. I could expose their manipulative game. My investigation began subtly, a quiet, almost obsessive dive and I started with online forums, local community groups, and even old news archives. I searched for mentions of Sophia, of Jessica, of any past incidents involving Michael. It was tedious work sifting through hundreds of posts, each one a potential dead end, but I was driven by a desperate primal need for justice. My reputation, my career, my entire sense of self had been stolen from me, and I would stop at nothing to reclaim self, a faint, almost forgotten breadcrumb. A post on a local neighborhood watch forum, dated 2 years prior. It was from a woman named Sarah complaining about a vengeful neighbor who had spread malicious rumors about her husband, costing him his job. The details were eerily, chillingly similar to my own story. The timing, the nature of the rumors, the sudden, inexplicable job loss, and the name of the vengeful neighbor who had orchestrated the same Jessica who was now friends with my mother, the same Jessica who was Sophia's sister. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. This was it. The connection I needed. I reached out to Sarah, cautiously at first, drafting and redrafting my message a dozen times. She was wary, understandably so, but after I explained my situation, a flicker of recognition, then deep, profound empathy crossed her face. She told me her husband, Brandon, had been a manager at a popular downtown restaurant. He'd had a friendly, professional working relationship with a new waitress. Nothing more, nothing less. But Jessica, a regular at the restaurant and a close confidant of Sophia's, had seen them together, twisted the narrative into something sinister, and fed it directly to Sophia. The rest, as they say, was history. Brandon lost his job, his reputation in tatters, and their family was plunged into financial turmoil, struggling to make ends meet. Jessica has a talent for making mountains out of molehills, Sarah explained, her voice heavy with resentment, the scars of her past still raw. She thrives on drama. And she absolutely loves being the hero who saves her sister's marriage, even if it means destroying innocent lives in the process. Destroying innocent lives in the process. Sheer destroying innocent lives in the process. Sheer if it means destroying innocent lives in the process. She's a master manipulator, a puppeteer pulling strings from the shadows. This was it. The undeniable proof I needed. It wasn't just my mother's careless gossip. It was a coordinated attack, a meticulously planned character assassination orchestrated by Jessica, fueled by Sophia's deep-seated insecurities and paranoia, and tragically enabled by my mother's inability to keep a secret. The thought made my blood boil, a searing inferno of righteous anger. I had to confront them. All of them. But how? I couldn't just walk into Sophia's house and demand answers. I needed a plan, something strategic, something that would expose their lies and clear my name once and for all, without giving them an opportunity to twist the narrative again. I decided to set a trap, a carefully constructed snare designed to catch them in their own web of deceit. I knew my mother, with her insatiable appetite for gossip, couldn't resist sharing a juicy piece of information. So I crafted a story, a meticulously detailed lie designed to expose their entire network. I called my mother, feigning a complete breakdown, my voice thick with manufactured tears. I told her I was pregnant, that it was Michael's baby, and that I was absolutely terrified of what it would mean for my future. I made her promise, again, with a desperate plea, that she wouldn't tell anyone, that this secret was too fragile, too dangerous to share. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that she wouldn't keep that promise. The bait was set. dangling tantalizingly before her. Now I just had to wait and watch their carefully constructed world begin to crumble. It didn't take long. Within 2 days, an anonymous email landed in my inbox, a stark warning to stay away from Michael, filled with veiled threats and thinly disguised accusations. It was unsigned, of course, but the tone, the specific, fabricated details I had shared with my mother, confirmed my suspicions. Jessica had taken the bait, but that wasn't enough. I needed concrete proof, something undeniable, something I could take to Michael, something that would make him see the truth, not just about me, but about the women he had surrounded himself with. I needed to record their conversation, to capture their venomous words, their calculated cruelty, and their own admissions of guilt. This moment shattered everything I knew. If you're feeling this shock too, hit like, it helps uncover more hidden family truth. The anonymous email was my confirmation. Jessica had swallowed the bait, hook, line, and sinker. Now, I needed to reel her in. I decided to confront her directly, but not alone. I needed a witness, someone who could corroborate my story. Chloe immediately came to mind. She was loyal, discreet, and understood the delicate dynamics of office politics. More importantly, she had seen firsthand the damage Sophia's paranoia could inflict. She had seen firsthand the damage Sophia's paranoia could inflict. We arranged a casual coffee meeting with Jessica, ostensibly to catch up and talk about work. I made sure the cafe was quiet, with plenty of ambient noise to mask our conversation, but not so loud that a recording device wouldn't pick up everything. Chloe, ever the meticulous planner, had a small, discreet voice recorder in her purse. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of my resolve. This frantic drumbeat against the silence of my resolve. Jessica arrived, all smiles and superficial charm. She launched into a monologue about her sister's unwavering devotion to Michael, subtly hinting at the sacrifices Sophia had made for their marriage. It was a thinly veiled attempt to reinforce the narrative that Michael was a prize to be protected, and any woman who dared to look his way was a threat. I let her talk, letting her dig her own grave with every carefully chosen word. Then I dropped the ball. Oh, I decided to subscribe because to pull your ball in. Jessica, I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I need to tell you something. Something I haven't told anyone else. Her eyes, usually darting and restless, settled on me, a flicker of predatory interest in their depths. I'm pregnant, I whispered, leaning forward conspiratorially. And it's Michael's. The reaction was instantaneous. Her face, usually a mask of polite indifference, contorted into a grotesque caricature of shock and triumph. I knew it, she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper, but laced with venom. I told Sophia there was something going on. He's always been a philanderer. Always. Chloe, bless her heart, played her part perfectly. Jessica, what are you talking about? She interjected, her voice laced with feigned confusion. Emily just laced with feigned confusion. Emily just toast. Emily just toast. Jessica, high on the thrill of her perceived victory, barely registered Chloe's words. He tried to deny it, of course, she continued, her voice rising with each word. Said Emily was just a delusional intern with a crush, but I knew better. I told Sophia that Emily was dangerous, that she was trying to break up their family. We had to do something. Do something? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. What exactly did you do? We spread the word, of course. A few carefully placed phone calls, a few whispers in the right ears. It wasn't hard. Everyone knows how devoted Sophia is to her husband, and everyone knows how easily rumors can destroy a career. She paused, taking a sip of her latte, oblivious to the trap she had walked into. It was for the best, really. Emily was a threat. And now, with this confirmation, Sophia will finally see him for what he is, the game-changing revelation. She had admitted to orchestrating the entire smear campaign, not out of concern for her sister, but out of a twisted sense of self-righteousness and a thirst for drama. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of triumph and disgust. This moment shattered everything I knew. If you're feeling this shock too, hit like. It helps uncover more hidden family truths. I looked at Chloe, who gave me a subtle nod. The recording, whoa. Jessica, still basking in the glow of her perceived cleverness, was oblivious. I stood up, my chair scraping against the tiled floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. "Thank you for your honesty, Jessica," I said, my voice cold and hard. "It's been very enlightening." Her smug expression faltered. She looked from me to Chloe, a dawning realization spreading across her face. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. Her voice she stammered. Her voice Lou. "What's going on?" Chloe interjected, her voice firm. "Is that you just admitted to slandering Emily, costing her her job, and destroying her reputation? And we have it all on tape." Jessica's face went white. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking like a ghost. She tried to speak, but no words came out. She looked around frantically, as if searching for an escape route, but there was none. The cafe wants a stage for her. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the distant clatter of dishes and the frantic pounding of my own heart. I watched her, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. The anger was still there, but it was tempered by a cold, hard resolve. I had been a victim of her machinations, a pawn in her twisted game. But not anymore. I had the truth, and with it the power to reclaim my life. The confrontation was far from over. The unmasking had begun. Jessica fled the cafe, leaving behind a half-empty latte and a trail of stunned silence. Chloe and I looked at each other, a shared sense of exhausted triumph passing between us. The recording was clear, undeniable proof of Jessica's malicious intent. It was everything I needed. But the victory felt hollow. The damage was done, my career derailed, my trust shattered. The path to healing, I knew, would be long and arduous. I sent the recording to Michael, along with a detailed explanation of everything that had transpired. I didn't expect him to believe me, not entirely, but I hoped at least that it would plant a seed of doubt, a crack in the narrative that had been so carefully constructed against me. His response came surprisingly quickly. A brief apologetic email acknowledging the recording and expressing his regret. He offered to write a letter of recommendation to help me find a new position. It wasn't an offer to rehire me, but it was something. A small step towards justice. My mother, when she finally heard about Jessica's confession, no doubt through the same grapevine she had used to spread my secrets, was predictably outraged. Not at herself, but at Jessica. How could she do that? She cried, her voice filled with a theatrical indignation. She cried, her voice filled with a theatrical indignation. I listened in silence, the familiar pattern of her self-deception playing out before me. I didn't bother to argue. There was no point. Her capacity for self-reflection was, and always had been, non-existent. I realized then that my anger, my hurt, wasn't just about the job or Michael or even Jessica. It was about a lifetime of small betrayals, of my privacy being treated as a commodity, of my feelings being secondary to my mother's need for drama and attention. I had spent so long trying to earn her trust, to make her see the harm she was causing. But she couldn't, or wouldn't, and I couldn't change her. The only thing I could change was my reaction to her. I decided to cut ties. It wasn't an easy decision. She was my mother, after all. But I couldn't continue to live in a constant state of anxiety, wondering when the next secret would be exposed, when the next piece of my life would be laid bare for public consumption. I moved further away, changed my number, and blocked her on social media. It felt drastic, even cruel, but it was a necessary act of self-preservation. I needed to build a new life, one free from the shadow of her influence. It's been a year since the shadowy old influence. It's been a year since I found a new job, a quieter one, in a different industry. I'm still rebuilding, still learning to trust again, but I'm stronger now, more resilient. I've learned that some relationships, no matter how deeply rooted, can become toxic, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking comments.